Hello, everyone. Uh, Today I'm just going to deviate a little bit from the ABCDs that I've been doing and speak to you about the Senate trial that's coming up today uh, to consider the removal of President Donald Trump on the articles of impeachment passed by the House of Representatives. I want to begin by pointing out the basis of impeachment as stated explicitly in the Constitution of the United States of America. In Article 1 of the Constitution, Section 2, it says, "The House of Representatives shall have the sole power of impeachment." Article 1, Section 3 says, "The Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. When sitting for that purpose, they shall be on oath or affirmation. When the President of the United States is tried, the Chief Justice shall preside, and no person shall be convicted without concurrence of 2/3 of the members present. Judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to remove from office and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. But the party convicted shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to law." Article 2, Section 4 of the United States Constitution says, "The President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors." So that's what the United States Constitution says about impeachment. That's about it. And now I'm going to read you an excerpt from a case known as Nixon versus Fitzgerald, which was opined upon a lot around the time, of course, of the Nixon proceedings. So I'll read an excerpt from Section 5 of it that says, "The rule of absolute immunity for the President will not leave the nation without sufficient protection against misconduct on the part of the Chief Executive. There remains a constitutional remedy of impeachment. In addition, there are formal and informal checks on presidential action that do not apply with equal force to other executive officials. The President is subjected to constant scrutiny by the press. Vigilant oversight by Congress also may serve to deter presidential abuses of office, as well as to make credible the threat of impeachment. Other incentives to avoid misconduct may include a desire to earn re-election, the need to maintain prestige as an element of presidential influence, and a president's traditional concern for his historical stature. The existence of alternative remedies and deterrence establishes that absolute immunity will not place the president above the law. For the president, as for judges and prosecutors, absolute immunity merely precludes a particular private remedy for alleged misconduct in order to advance compelling public ends." So, the immunity and the privilege that the President of the United States can assume under this ruling are against private remedies for misconduct, presumably by private parties. when that is weighed against the public actions he takes that may have private harm, but to compelling public interest outweighs the private when he is in the capacity of President of the United States. This opinion also brings out the scrutiny of the press, which this president has, over the last 3 years, beaten down over and over and over again, insulted and rebuked as being fake. Any vigilant oversight by Congress that this opinion says is another protection against misconduct has been brushed off and stonewalled by this administration, and has been supported by the Justice Department, which, although it is part of an executive branch, is our Justice Department, the People's Justice Department, not the president's private law firm. And the desire to win re-election, that deterrent, I mean, he's using this as fodder for re-election. You have to understand that everything that, even this opinion, not just our Constitution, but this opinion of the Supreme Court of the United States brings out, has been turned on its head. To maintain the prestige and the element of presidential influence. I mean, we're seeing that waning all around the world. We're seeing the European community laughing at us, not with us, like we did at Buckingham Palace with Justin Trudeau. And the presidential tradition of historical stature, I mean, I don't even know. I mean, have you ever had a president like this who says bullshit over and over and over again, as if it was, something that he started saying when he fell out of his mother's womb? That's where we are today. So now let's talk about the only remedy that is therefore of any value, which is impeachment and then removal. Impeachment has happened. Okay? Removal, which happens upon the vote of the Senate after the Senate trial, is what we're at now. So before I do that, I'll give you a quick history of impeachment. There have been 3 presidents in United States history who have been impeached: Andrew Johnson, Bill Clinton, and now Donald Trump. Nixon resigned, therefore he would have been impeached and probably removed. Anyway, but he wasn't, so we're not going to talk about him. Andrew Johnson's impeachment case probably came the closest. Came the closest because it was 1 vote shy in the Senate of them actually removing President Johnson. But they didn't, which is that high bar that the Constitution places on 2/3 of members present. Not the members in the Senate, but the members present. Remember that. Because that's important. What if 5 Republican senators decided they didn't want to come and be part of the trial? That could also have an impact. Anyway, so Bill Clinton's impeachment, he was impeached. Andrew Johnson was impeached for a violation of the Tenure of Office Act. And his impeachment numbers were 128 yes, 47 no. Bill Clinton was impeached. 4 articles were introduced: perjury to a grand jury, perjury in the Jones case, obstruction of justice, abuse of power. He was impeached on 2 of those, which was perjury to a grand jury and obstruction of justice. And the margins of them were 2 votes less than what Donald Trump's impeachment numbers were. Donald Trump was impeached for abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. Now that we have come to the Senate trial part of it, we now know Donald Trump's lead attorneys, and one of the more vocal, media-savvy, and respected attorneys from Harvard, Alan Dershowitz, has made this public argument that whether or not what President Trump did is wrong or not, the articles for which he was impeached by the House of Representatives were offenses which are not impeachable. He has claimed that abuse of power and obstruction of Congress are not crimes. They weren't used previously in previous impeachment proceedings, and also that historically the impeachment has been left for criminal acts that violate some sort of public interest, right? So let's just go back substantively to about what President Trump has been impeached. The substance of this is President Donald Trump has been impeached by the House of Representatives of the United States of America for abusing his power by obstructing congressionally approved aid to a foreign nation in order to coerce and extort that foreign nation's leader, Ukraine's leader, to investigate Joe Biden, who currently is running who presumptively is the front runner for the Democrats to run against President Donald Trump for the upcoming presidential election. That abuse of power, which is using his office, withholding congressionally approved aid to a foreign nation to investigate his political rival for the private purpose of re-electing him, is the abuse of power for which he has been impeached. Right. Now, about Mr. Dershowitz's argument that it's not impeachable because it's not a crime, he's doing it within the purview of his presidency. This is typical of the abuse of power, and as Nixon v. Fitzgerald points out, falls like as squarely as you can within all of the parameters of the checks that the Supreme Court says that we, the public, the press, and Congress has on the president so he doesn't go off the rails. So that is what the abuse of power, the first part of it, the first article of impeachment is against. And the second article of impeachment is obstruction of Congress. Unlike in previous impeachment proceedings, most recently the Bill Clinton impeachment proceedings, the Donald Trump administration has obstructed all evidence, all witnesses from coming and testifying to the House of Representatives during the investigative impeachment process. So now that it has gone to trial, they are arguing that witnesses and documents that were not introduced and not part of the public eye or Congress's eye during the impeachment process cannot be introduced in Senate so the public and the senators may see the whole picture. That was not the case with the Bill Clinton impeachment proceeding. When the Senate got the impeachment documents, the investigation, the witness testimonies were already there, and they still were allowed to have witnesses during the Senate trial. In this case, they're obstructing witnesses. They obstructed witnesses during the investigative procedure for which the obstruction of Congress charge was put on. And to this day, they continue as they go into the Senate trial to obstruct Congress. And this is the last leg and very important leg of how they're obstructing Congress. When Mr. Dershowitz stands up and says that it is not an impeachable offense and gives his rationale and his 50 years of expertise, he completely neglects Article 1 of the Constitution. Article 1, again, of the Constitution of the United States, Section 2, says, the House of Representatives shall have the sole power of impeachment. It doesn't say what impeachment is. It doesn't say who defines what impeachment is, except that the House of Representatives does so, and not by 2/3 vote, therefore presumptively by simple majority. And it's not like the Bill Clinton House of Representatives are impeaching the Donald Trump White House or President Donald Trump, or the Andrew Johnson House of Representatives is impeaching Donald Trump. It's this sitting Congress, this sitting House of Representatives we have today that determines what is an impeachable offense. And as far it has done so under the umbrella of abuse of power, because his abuses are so big, it has attacked not only the premise of the impeachment investigative procedure, it has attacked the press, it has attacked our integrity as a nation, and the public trust that the world puts on us. So it is decided whether Alan Dershowitz says it's unimpeachable, the articles of impeachment are not impeachable offenses. Well, that's not for him to decide. That's not even for precedent to decide, because each impeachment is its own creature. It is specific and unique to its time and circumstances and the person. So it can't be previously predetermined as to what is impeachable. And when you look at abuse of power, and you stagger down to what he did and how he has continued and continues to this day to cloak himself around this idea of presidential immunity and executive privilege, he's laughing at the face of the Constitution and the opinion from the Supreme Court that says these are the safeguards against presidential abuses of power. Anyway, so all of this said and done, what Mr. Dershowitz is saying is that these offenses are not impeachable. It is not for Mr. Dershowitz to say. It is not for the Bill Clinton impeachment people to say. It's not for Ken Starr to say. It's not for Andrew Johnson's ghost to say. It's for this House of Representatives to say. And they have said it. And the only thing that's remaining now is for the Senate to get a whole picture of what is happening and be able to determine impartially whether what the president did and was impeached for warrants removal from office. That's it. So any smoke screening that goes on about these offenses not being impeachable is a moot point, because it clearly is. It passed the House of Representatives by numbers higher than the Bill Clinton articles of impeachment that passed. And anyone says it was completely a partisan exercise. Justin Amash was once a GOP who was brave enough, whose district is one of the reddest, most influential red districts in the country, stood up and said, no, I'll stand for my Constitution and for my people. So it's not partisan. It's political. It has been. It has been throughout history. And politics and partisanship are brothers. So in the Johnson case, it happened. In the Clinton case, it happened. Party lines were definitive. And it has happened even more so in this case. Remember that this impeachment was possible because the 2018 election, when the American people put in a Democratic majority in the House of Representatives. And the House of Representatives determines what is impeachable. They have decided it's abuse of power and it's obstruction of Congress. And now it is up to the Senate, by simple majority, mind you, to prove more witnesses and testimony that the House of Representatives were obstructed from, so they may get the whole picture, and so the American people may get a whole picture of what has happened and what this president has been doing for the last 3 years with our vote, with our money, and with our government. I really, really, really hope that you will look at it from this point of view. I really hope that you will see, even if it's one of you. Because what is happening, what begins today is historic. It'll define what we are. It'll define these senators who vote. And history will remember them. Because the matter, the substantive matter for which Donald Trump is being impeached is for involving a foreign nation in the election process of our country. Bill Clinton didn't do that. Andrew Johnson didn't do that. Even Nixon didn't do that. He invited foreign nations. He did that with Russia. It wasn't proved that he was directly connected to it, but it's highly coincidental, isn't it? That hours after he requests Russia hack Hillary Clinton, they do. And they continue to. And he continues to deny that part of the intelligence community's information. And then Ukraine. Then he jokes about involving China in our presidential elections. He is the sitting incumbent president of the United States saying that from the White House lawn. How can that be okay with Americans? And if that is just the tip of the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg, what is the whole iceberg? We need to know. We have a right to know. Thank you.